I just got finished reading Exodus. You know, continuing from Genesis, Israel is actually named after a person. Isn't just a place. And they mention the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Keep in mind that Jacob is Israel because Jacob he fought with God like all night, and after the fight God told him that he was strong and his name should now be called Israel. So Israel and his descendants is the whole nation, and there's 12 tribes, and there's 12 tribes because Israel had 12 sons. And one of his sons, Levi, he had a son. He had a son with someone that was actually part of his tribe, meaning that again, it was incest. So the son that they had was, they called him Moses. Now, when Moses was born, his mother knew that there was something great about him. So she put him in a basket and sent him down the river. And someone found him, and then he was raised amongst the Egyptians for a while. The reason why she had to send Moses in a basket is because God kept on making promises to give them a whole bunch of land, and, multiply the family and make their family large, and they own all this stuff and make them rich. God kept word, but what happened was the Israelites got so big, they was like starting to outnumber the Egyptians. So the Egyptians put them into slavery to like kind of control it. So they could try to stop their line or so the Egyptians could stop the Israelites from having too many children and overpopulating them and taking over. The kings decided to ordered the Egyptians to kill all the sons. Like if a female birthed a son, to kill them and throw them in the river, but for the girls, keep the girls. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, which is Israel, he promised them, he kept on promising each of them all of this land and all this stuff for their family will multiply, their family. And what happened was the family got too big that now they in slavery years, like hundreds of years they in slavery because of what the promises. When Moses grew up, he moved away. He saw some wrongdoing, and he saw like an Egyptian doing something wrong to Israel, and he actually had to kill the Egyptian, and he ran off and he got married, and he had 2 sons, and he was living with his father-in-law. And he decided to come back because God came to him and told him that he needed to go back and get his people. That's why he went back to Egypt, to get his people and lead them out of slavery and lead them to the land that they was promised. Moses wasn't too confident in himself. He didn't think that the people would listen to him because, remember, he wasn't raised around them, and he didn't think he spoke well enough. So God told him, you have a brother Aaron that can help you talk to the people. And God told him a couple of things. For instance, he gave him a staff, like a sword, a stick of some sort, and he told him to throw the stick on the floor. And when you throw the stick on the floor, it's gonna turn into a snake, and that's gonna help. All these, I don't want to say tricks, but all like magic, I would say. All these things just in case the people would doubt him. Moses and Aaron, when they showed all the people the tricks, what happened was there was sorcerers, and magicians at this time. So they're not the only person that could do all the tricks, all the magic that God taught them how to do, which I found was like, okay. So it's like God, like the best magician out there then. So the king was like, no, I'm not letting you take your people out of there, because he wasn't impressed, because, that was a time of magic. A lot of other people could do it too. They plagued them with diseases. They God ruined their crops. Like 10 things to actually convince the king. The last thing I believe that was done to help the Israelites out of Egypt was God said that I think he started killing off all their firstborn sons, and the king wasn't having that, so they let them go. And after some time, the king thought I was bugging, why would I let them go? It was it's a lot of them. It's like 500,000 of them. So it's like, that's a lot of slaves, like a lot of workers. Why did I just let them go like that? So he decided to send his army out after the Israelites to bring them back. Well, God told them that he was going to split the sea. And then when he split the sea, he let the Israelites walk through like on dry land. You know, they in the ocean, but they walking through. And when the Egyptians came through, he put the water back, so all the Egyptians, they all died. God kept on saying he was doing it so the people, the Israelites would know that he's God, that he's their God, that he saved them. Yeah, he saved them, but when you think about it, he also put them in a predicament they was in, because he kept on promising them, like, you're going to be great in numbers, you're going to be great in numbers. So he had to foresee, I'm thinking God foresaw that because they'll be so great that they'll turn into slaves. It's kind of weird. It's like, you know, God spoke to them, and then, you know, he made them all these promises so that they could do what he says. And the same promises that they made them wind up getting them into slavery. Then they had to call on him again, or he came again, to help the Israelites and get out of the slavery that he put them in, technically. They're always at God's mercy. Like, they always need God. It kind of reminds me of like the government today that we have. Like, how is it, you know, how the government is run? Like, keep on promising people all this stuff, and then so the people will be always at their mercy. Like, no matter what, they can never get out of it. It's always at their mercy. Like, they made a deal with God, and it's never gonna be over. Like, you know, like, okay, you want this land, you want that your family to be great, this is what you're gonna have to go through. It's like they're never out of debt with God. So I'm like, okay. So that's what I'm getting from the Exodus. And not only what I realized too is that they was on this journey. They journeyed from like, from Egypt to the land of the promised land. They was like 40 years on this journey. So it's like all this has happened. And also, while this is happening, church comes into play. And this is like when worship and church, like the first, like church comes into play and stuff. Because, you know, he tells them to make a tent, a meeting tent. And this is where he starts giving rules. Like, God starts like putting his authority in. Like, this is reminding me of government now, today's government, or government, how you have it around the world. Starts telling them like, oh, you know, the rules, like, you know, if you have an ox and you borrow your neighbor's ox and the ox dies and the owner is not there, then you have to pay them back. Like, or whatever rules or whatever issues they had, like he was making laws for it. Then he said, God said one thing, but the whole Bible gives explanations of why, but this one thing had no explanation. It was just like one line. It was like, don't let the sorceress live. Versus really it's the female sorcerers. Don't let the sorceress live. And it's like basically kill the witches, but it doesn't say why. Like, why can the males be magicians and females can't? It never said why. The whole thing, it just said that one line, that it just don't let them live for whatever reason. So I'm like, all right, it didn't give much explanation, but I'm guess it's because of that Eve thing, because of Eve, you know, ate, but you know, Adam and Eve both ate it together. So I don't know what's the deal, like why the females, but it's always like, it's a man's world in this Bible, you know, because it's just a man's world. Even the king told them to kill off all the Israelite sons, but if they birth a daughter, keep the daughter. So it's like, it's the son, it really matters, of the bloodline of the sons. So I understand that, but I don't see the harm of having witches. If there's magicians anyway, why can't females do it as well? I don't see it. It didn't explain it. So that's one thing that stuck out. That's another thing that stuck out. Should I say? Okay, Moses goes up to the mountains, Mount Sinai, and that's when the 10 Commandments is made and stuff. And he was up in the mountains in the clouds for like 40 days and 40 nights. They mention 40 days and 40 nights a lot. Like every time he goes to meet God, basically it's like for 40 days and 40 nights he's talking to God. I still don't know the significance of the 40 days, 40 nights. Like even in Genesis, the flood, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights and stuff like that. So I don't know why that's so significant. It didn't tell me yet. Moses comes down with the tablets and stuff, and he starts, telling people like what God told him. But I'm wondering because when Cain killed Abel, Eve had another son, and she named him Seth. And from Seth, that's when she started worshiping. That's when men and women start worshiping and praying to God, because they wanted to thank God for Seth. So was that the start of God's idea to make rules and to make worship an idea that he had for a church? Is this an idea, and then he just knew it was going to happen? Like, from when Eve started praying to him, did that set the set of events that happened after that? Did that make, because at the beginning people was meditating, they had healing stones and stuff like that. People wasn't praying to God and worshiping God before Seth. So I wonder if that gave God the idea to make people start worshiping, and they need to follow rules because the people were so wicked, and that was like a way for him, like he didn't want to flood the place no more. So it's like, was that a way for God to be like, okay, these people got to be put in order, because I don't want to have to go against my word and flood them out again. So I wonder if he was like, well, if they're going to be loyal to me, if I do stuff for them like that, like, and they praise me for it, if I keep on giving them stuff and they praise me for it, like, so maybe that started it. I don't know. This is just what I'm getting from the Bible. Going back, I want to go back a little bit more, because Moses asking, to God for help, like when he was first trying to convince the people to the Israelites to come out of Egypt. He told God, like, who should I tell them? Like, who should I tell them? Like, who are you? Like, what's your name? What should I tell these people? So he was like, I'm the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Like, tell them that. Then he's like, oh, your name. And then he's like, I am, I am who I am. That's who I am. Like, almost like, why do I need a name? Like, I am who I am. And before that, when he gave Jacob the name Israel, Jacob asked the same thing, like, what's your name? And then, God looked back and was like, why you need to know my name? You don't need to know my name. Later God says, I'm the God of this, I'm the God of strength. He says like titles, not names, but titles. Wow. But yeah, also, when they make the church, at first they was like, well, when they made the tent for meeting, which is basically a church, it's like so elaborate. Like, I need this made out of gold, I want this made out of gold, I want this, da, 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 da. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of work. And then I realized it says it was like over 600,000 of Israelites at this point. So when 600,000 people is all working together, the work gets done quick. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's not too bad of a job, which is way more better than when God commanded Noah to build an ark with his sons. It was like, he had 2 or 3 sons. It was like 4 of them building an ark that could fit like every type of animal in his family, and they was going to stay there for 105 days, on this ship, stuff like that. So it's like, wow. So imagine how long it took 4 people to build that big thing. Now it's another big thing. At least they got 600,000 people to help. Well, half that, because I don't know if they let the women help, really. The woman gave up stuff like jewelry and offerings to like help build. But I don't know if the labor, the hands-on, I don't know if the women did some of that. But still, it's like, even if you split that in half, it's like 300,000 compared to 4. And I found it interesting because the chest piece of the priest's suits, like when he's giving everybody, appointing everybody, like starting the church, like, okay, giving everybody jobs, like you're the priest of this church. This is the altar. This is the way you do it. Like telling the people the Israelites how to run the church, basically. So I find it, again, he brings up the healing stones. The healing stones is brought up because the chest piece of the priest's uniforms is like, made out, the colors are like blue, purple, and scarlet. And for each tribe, there's 12 tribes of the Israelites, Israel's 12 sons. And for every tribe, there's a stone, like sapphire is for one one of the sun. You know, each of the 12 stones it represents each of the 12 sons. So I find that interesting, and that's my take on Exodus. I think that's all I have to say about Exodus of what I'm thinking so far. But let me know, like, so people that have read the Bible, like the whole Bible, and like they take on it, and people that actually like read it themselves, not like, I mean, even if you've been a person that been in church, I didn't grow up in a church, so really all of this I'm just like reading now. I went to a church, I've been to church, but not to like, I guess I wasn't really paying attention, and it's hard to just jump in the middle anyway when the pastor reads something. It ain't like you know the whole story. But I am amazed that at least the big stories, like the flood, the main big stories, even the, God splitting the sea, the main big stories I know somehow. There's not one big gigantic story that I don't know. I just don't know the steps, how they got to that, why. But now I'm figuring out why, like what's in between all those big stories, basically. And it's interesting, and I'm just curious to see, like, when I'm done reading the Bible, like how I feel. But I do like the fact that it has a lot of meditation in it and a lot of stuff about healing stones, because I'm into that. So that was the end of Exodus. That's what I had to say about Exodus. So when I get to the next chapter, I'll see you guys again.